That's a clip from 1944 combat footage of Panzergrenadier on the Eastern Front, and it's pretty good. Here we see a young soldier, possibly in his baptism of fire, peering into a destroyed Soviet tank. You can imagine the carnage inside. Come on, take the 2 seconds to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You won't be disappointed. Today, we'll continue with the 1943-44 photo album that shows a cavalry unit, which eventually converted into a Panzergrenadier formation. I'll talk about how cavalry units were used by the Wehrmacht, and we'll see some associated private training footage. Finally, responding to a comment string in the last video, I'll talk about leadership styles in the Wehrmacht. In part 1, we saw a short clip of a 1944 Panzergrenadier training film. Go become a channel member on Patreon and take a look at the first 10 minutes of that film. Among other advantages, as a channel member, you'll get access to footage that I get clips from to produce these videos, basically every week. I'll make sure that it's worth your while. Our mystery photographer was not part of this bicycle unit that was also training in northern Germany in the spring of 1943. In the following pages, we see his regiment training to become a cavalry formation. The mobile fighting units that were not motorized were still being formed in 1943 is interesting. Experience with the harsh Russian winters had proven that non-tracked vehicles were often immobilized. Tracked vehicles generally didn't have the same problem of getting constantly bogged down, but they too suffered mechanical difficulties caused by the biting cold. Well, that's really nice footage from Army Group Center from 1943. Motorized and mechanized elements, they simply couldn't compete with the mobility offered by cavalry. And with the increasing problem of resupply, horses could better live off the land. In a pinch, they could even be eaten. A number of photographs like this one show the soldiers with their horses out in the field, which is good evidence that the photographer himself was on horseback. Here we see private footage of the training of a cavalry unit in 1941. During the Soviet counteroffensive during the winter of 1941-42, the Germans, through necessity, began organizing mobilized defensive formations that could be rushed to critical locations along the front. Here specifically, the cavalry units had shown their effectiveness. It's a misconception that such units attacked on horseback. The horses were used to transport the light infantry to their area of operation, where they would then dismount and act as regular infantry. At the firing range, this sign reads, "No mounted horsemen." The cavalrymen are training on an MG-34. Obviously, there was never any intention of firing automatic weapons like this from horseback. It seems that the trainee just forgot to flip the safety switch. And here, I believe, we finally get to see a picture of the photographer. In these photos, he seems to be back home on leave. I'd like to reflect on a comment string that can be found on part 1 in this series, which referred to the pleasant manner that the officers and men were interacting in the training film clip. Adding to what was left, Wehrmacht officers had the freedom to interact with their subordinates in the way that they believed would achieve the best results. Competent leaders who treated their men with respect and were sincerely interested in their well-being were often beloved in return. An example would be General Eduard Dietl, who was in charge of the 20th Mountain Army. He first gained prominence during the Norwegian campaign and became known as the Hero of Narvik. Later during Barbarossa, he was in command far to the north in the push towards Murmansk. Dietl was known for his leading from the front, experiencing the same hardships as his men, and making sure that his injured soldiers were well taken care of. He had a natural way of interacting that can be clearly seen in the limited film footage that we have. In contrast, less competent or insecure leaders could treat their subordinates with contempt or even aggression. An example would be Otto Ernst Remer, who played a major role in putting down the failed military putsch, which took place after the botched assassination attempt on Hitler. For his actions, he was immediately promoted 2 ranks to become a colonel and portrayed as a national hero in the news. Realizing himself that he was, to say the least, a controversial figure, he played his propaganda role to the hilt.
Wir sind heute Gottlob politische Soldaten. Unser politischer Auftrag lautet Sicherung unseres Lebensraums, Verteidigung unseres deutschen Vaterlandes, Verteidigung unserer nationalsozialistischen Idee, und wir werden diesen politischen Auftrag unter allen Umständen durchführen bis zu unserem endgültigen Sieg.
Had Remer been promoted because of his effective leadership skills? No, he'd become the caricature of what the world expected a Nazi to be. Thanks for watching.